the government has hit back on the critics of goods and services tax. Revenue Secretary Ajay Bhushan Pandey, while admitting the need to improve the GST, tells ET Now that the government will look at data analytics and try to plug in any revenue leakages if any. My colleague Ashna is now joining us. Ashna, what were the key takeaways of the interaction?
Yes, that's right. As we have been hearing from the critics all along, that there is a problem with the structure of the GST and the way it was implemented. The government has now hit back. The Revenue Secretary has told ET Now that it is not fair to say that GST is the cause of slowdown, or whether GST has led to the high compliance burden. So that is totally unfair and incorrect to say. That is what the Revenue Secretary has told ET Now. However, he said that they will keep improving GST structure, as there's always a scope for improvement under anything. Also, he said that the ultimate aim is that most people should be able to file their own returns under GST without any help, and a committee of officers will look at further simplification of GST. Right now, the government is working towards easing compliance. Linking of Aadhaar and GST registration will also curb tax evaders and fly-by-night operators. So that is the aim that the government is working towards. Also, the GST Council and the government will work towards operationalizing 20% cap on additional input tax credit. And the Revenue Secretary also told ET Now that the government will now be using data analytics to check large imbalances for fake invoices. Also, lastly but equally importantly, the taxpayers will now be asked for explanation where there is a discrepancy found of around or over 1 lakh rupees. So the GST system will identify cases where there are tax discrepancies of over 1 lakh, and they will be sent an SMS, and then they will be asked to fix that. This is what the Revenue Secretary told ET Now.
Okay, thank you, Ashna. But we also have Ruchi joining in to fill us in with more details. Ruchi, what did the Revenue Secretary have to say actually about the tax collections? What actually impacted that?
Well, one has to take into account that GST collections for the last 2 months have been low. In fact, the last reading that we saw for GST was about 91,000 crore, which is the lowest that we've seen ever since the GST came into being. And the government believes that there have been multiple factors for that. First of all, the fact that we have seen how in the economy, real estate, auto, as well as several other sectors have been suffering, and that has had an impact on the tax collections as well. Besides that, in the month of September, we saw there were floods in many parts of the country, and that has led to a fall with respect to collection. However, I must point out, Cheryl, that the other issue, besides, of course, augmenting the revenues that the government will have to deal with almost immediately, will have to be on the compensation cess. We at ET Now have been reporting how compensation cess has been depleting, mostly on account of low collections, and this is an issue that the next GST Council meeting would very well have to take up. There are, of course, under the GST law, there is a provision that the compensation cess can be increased, but that has to mean that the government will have only two ways of doing so, which is either increase the cess on existing products or increase the basket under which the cess is applicable. So these are two important things that the Council will have to mull the next time they meet. The issue of compensation cess depleting is an important one, and the centre has to address it almost immediately.